Hey folks, short one today. I've been editing a wedding catalog all week, so I haven't exactly had a ton of free time. And if you notice me itching at any point during this video, know that it's not drugs. It's because I got, by my count, 34 mosquito bites at the aforementioned wedding. I did want to pop in, though, with something that I think is ultimately kind of hopeful for humanity's future, despite the fact that the immediate future is kind of a fascistic disaster. And I don't mean to distract from any of that with this video. I know that I am likely to be one of the later people to directly suffer from the out-and-out evils of this administration, and I take that knowledge very seriously. That said, I think it's important to highlight the fact that this state of affairs isn't natural. It isn't sustainable, and barring some very specific and viscerally horrifying circumstances, it will not win in the long run. And to do that, let's take a look at a video by Echo Chamberlain, a right-wing YouTuber who a couple months ago uploaded a video called "Trans Ideology Has Collapsed." Contrary to many of the people in this sphere who express their disdain for people less powerful than them through insults and explicit cruelty, EC attempts to couch his thinly veiled hatred in what he seems to think is measured, reasoned language.
After the multi-generational narratives of the suffragettes and women's liberation, and the civil rights movement, and then homosexual recognitions and law reforms, trans rights is the first such major narrative of social liberation to not just come to an abrupt halt, to not just go backwards, but to be having its ideological aims and core beliefs be invalidated.
See what I mean? And this is a lie, but it's a good lie. The idea that he's expressing here, that historical civil rights movements have followed a similar upward trending pattern while the trans movement has broken that pattern, is almost compelling. It implies that in some way, trans rights are an illegitimate civil rights cause. And he's right that in a lot of ways, life for trans people today is markedly worse than it was, say, 10 years ago. The world made significant progress for trans people before quickly backsliding into the nightmare that we face today. But as I said, he's lying. Every civil rights movement in history has been met with backlash. Trans rights are not the only rights being rolled back right now, not by a long shot. Primarily, women's bodily autonomy has been fundamentally violated by the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Immigrants who were promised amnesty and safety in America are now being forcibly detained. There's a not insignificant chance that Obergefell may be overturned in the next several years, rolling back rights for gay people. Labor rights are, of course, being systemically eroded, as they always have been. Every civil rights movement faces systemic backlash. If there was no backlash, there would not need to be a movement in the first place. Ronald Reagan made the US worse for black people than it was before he became president. A large portion of Confederate monuments were erected decades to a century after the Civil War as a means of targeting civil rights protesters. What we're facing right now is a fight. It's a fight against money, against conservatism, against prejudice, and against those who seek power by sowing division. And one of the ways they will try to convince you that they aren't so bad after all is by reframing their prejudice and division as uniquely justified. They'll tell you that all those other civil rights movements were perfectly okay, but this one isn't. And if you rewind a few years, they said the same exact thing about Me Too. They said the same thing about gay rights and every single right that people fought for before that. EC goes on to explain the basis for his video.
Trans activism lost its footing so badly because it hasn't been able to fight the battle it wanted. Its ideal and envisaged opponent was reactionary conservatives. That was the ideal opponent, one which could be written off as being on the wrong side of history, as one whose ignorance could be abided through. But that hasn't been the main opponent. Trans activism's biggest foe has been institutional, and for the most part, the kind of institutions progressives usually extol. Highly educated, highly informed and experienced academic and pedagogical veterans, professionals with gravitas, consciously above politics, and with impeccable credentials.
And something I'd like to call attention to here is that he hasn't actually got examples. He has one. The Cass Report, a published analysis riddled with methodological failures and embarrassing mistakes and dishonesty, a broader critique of which I have linked below. The rest of his video is just declarative statements based on this fundamental failing. The trans movement is being destroyed by the same rigorous academic workers trans people once looked up to, by which he means one single source confirms his beliefs and all of the other sources just don't count for some reason. He complains at one point about how the transes added words to the English language.
The trans movement activists became enthralled by ideological constructs of non-binarism and fluidity, of devising and imposing upon the vast generality terms like cisgender or male presenting, leading to a cultural mess of relativism and inevitable antagonisms.
He attempts to pathologize this, imply that it is somehow a bridge too far to increase the number of adjectives that we have access to, but the rest of us know the truth. If there were real risks to cis people, real concerns that trans folks had, they wouldn't have to scrape the bottom of the barrel. They wouldn't have to complain that they're being asked to use accurate language for relevant discussions. They wouldn't have to make up implied potential hypothetical future risks. They'd be able to point to the ones that exist right now. And every movement before this one has faced these exact same challenges. Every one of those movements hangs in the balance right now, but historically, they have eventually won. Small victories sometimes, and they don't instantly stick forever, but today is in many ways better than 100 years ago, and I suppose in some ways worse. And I hope that on some level you take solace in the fact that the strategy hasn't changed. They have not found new creative arguments or means of disincentivizing dissent. They are condemned to repeat the same tired talking points because they know they're wrong. They know that their beliefs are unnatural. They know that they'll lose eventually, and everything in the interim is a desperate power grab. Thanks for watching. Like my subscribe button.